Okay, before I dive into my speech, just a reminder for folks that might have been traveling, it's Valentine's Day today. So if you have not sent a note to your significant other, do it now or you'll be in the doghouse when you get home. I remembered this morning. Okay, so I am Rebbecca Clarke, and I have had the privilege of working for FCC for 30 years in our corporate office in Regina, Saskatchewan, more recently as our Vice President and Treasurer. And what's not obvious in that title is I've had the great privilege of leading our venture capital team as part of that role for the last 5 years. And so that's the part of my job that I'll focus on. Unless there's questions on asset liability management, I'm happy to do that too. So FCC is a proud sponsor of the Canadian Food Innovation Network, and we're grateful to be here for the opportunity to speak and participate in putting on this fabulous event for you guys today. It's going to be an exciting and inspiring day. So yesterday was an awesome day, and I have to say these events over the last 5 years are my favorite, because this is where we get to hear from people like you in this room that are passionate about ag and food, that you bring the expertise, the knowledge, and the drive that's really going to shape this industry for us going forward. So buckle in, is a great room. There's lots of nervous energy because, like me, I get nervous when I'm up here on the podium, and there's a bunch of folks that are going to get up here and join us, but it's an exciting and fascinating day for all of us. So I'm going to share a little bit with you about what FCC learned about the challenges, opportunities, and some of the gaps that are occurring today in ag and food from the investment space side of things. And I got to put my glasses on to read some of my notes, you guys. So, an old school paper notes here, so forgive the flipping. So I want to kick off first, and I need to drive this, don't I? I want to kick off first with an overview of FCC. So if you haven't figured out what we've done over the last day or two of conferences here, FCC was founded in 1959 as a federal crown corporation with a focus specifically and only on the ag and food industry in Canada. We build strong relationships, share knowledge and expertise with producers, agribusiness, food and beverage and entrepreneurs across the country. And when you succeed, we succeed. We're a catalyst, a partner, and a champion for the industry. And we're working to remove barriers of entry to the industry for folks in key groups like young producers, women, and Indigenous people. Agriculture and food contributes $143 billion annually to Canada's GDP. Our nation is one of the top agriculture and agri-food trading nations, and we employ just over 2 billion people a year. And FCC has a unique position as not only an agricultural lender, but a proud supporter of this industry. We do this through lending products, services, community involvement, and all the ways that we invest today in ag and food. And some of you would have heard our CEO, Justine Hendricks, speak at yesterday's Future of Food event about how much the world relies on Canadian ag and food, and the generational opportunity our country has to impact hunger, health, climate, and economic growth. To seize this opportunity, we will need to take on new risks, new beginnings, and forge new partnerships. And that's exactly why we're all here today. The brilliant minds in this room and the food tech innovations and innovators that you are bringing to the table are going to help us win the battle against climate change, solve our food security challenges, promote health, and drive economic growth. And you can count on FCC to be along on this journey with you. So I want to dive into some of the key learnings that we've learned about the investment space for ag and food. Oh, I must slide behind. Sorry, here we go. There we go. Let me flip my notes 1 second. Okay, so the data that you will see on the, what side is this that you're facing? This side of the chart. The data shows that Canada overall, venture capital investment for all industries as a percentage of GDP puts Canada in 3rd place in the globe. So that's not a bad spot to be. That's a pretty significant position for Canada. When we think about the growth and the development of venture capital investment across all industries, that's not a bad stat. Total annual investment in Canadian ag and business, which is that side of the chart, has grown significantly over the last 5 years. So you can see really small bars, bigger bars in the last 5 years. But if you look at that, that's not a consistent upward trend. So we peaked in 2018, some volatility in there, but the good news, we are seeing increased investment in the space, lots of renewed energy and interest and success for this industry. So that's a great thing. The majority of the investment has come from investment firms, corporates, private investors in North America, with a large portion coming through domestic funds, which tend to be primarily government-backed in Canada, and often not fully dedicated to the space or investment in just ag and food. The maturity of the ag venture capital ecosystem needed to support innovation still remains relatively low in Canada, compared to the other jurisdictions around the world and the other industries in Canada where investment occurs. And this low maturity is evidenced most clearly by the comparatively slower growth in VC deals, relatively low investment sizes, and the scarcity of VC firms focused on this space. So when you look at this in a couple different ways, we took a slice of this by looking at annual investment in ag and food alone as a percentage of GDP. And Canada drops to a 7th ranking position when you isolate just ag and food investment. So 3rd overall when we consider all industries, 7th overall when we look at ag and food. And so what that tells you is overall investment in Canada is strong, but the portion going towards ag and food is not as much. And so there's some opportunity there. We also tried looking at this a different way, which was to look at annual investment in ag and food per hectare of agricultural land. And you'll see from that basis, we dropped to 13th. And then we did some backwards math to say if we use those as some benchmarks and said if we wanted to be 3rd on one or both of those metrics, like we are for the overall investment space, that would represent an opportunity between $1 billion and $5 billion annually for increased investment in ag and food. All that to say, we have opportunity and a need for this sector for us to continue to invest in innovation, growth, and really helping our companies grow and scale. Some other interesting stats we saw when we looked at transaction deal is that overall there's a gap, that $1 billion to $5 billion, that gap is everywhere. That's in all stages from startup to late stage. But the data itself shows that we actually have some interesting data on a transactional level that's happening. Canada's average deal size, so sort of the gray section of my chart here, from 2012 to 2021 has remained relatively the same. So our average deal size has stayed at 6 million, where you can see the US and globally, that average size of deal has grown in scale to 29. So again, more dollars, bigger dollars, progressing and scaling companies is a gap that we saw. We also saw related to this that exits in ag investments were found to occur earlier overall when compared to the broader investment market, and they often occur through corporate acquisitions, 64% of the time, versus things like public listings. And Canadian companies are frequently needing to find foreign investors to fill their investment gaps and financing needs. This chart shows that in Canada, we are investing proportionately more in early stage innovation. So 66% of the investment dollars we have that's going into ag and food tend to be in that seed, pre-seed, early stage. Over recent years, we've seen growth in our accelerators, our incubators, our research centers, and our smart farms, which is exciting growth that we needed to have here. We have a great deal of support that's going into this early stage that's coming from both provincial and federal government, industry, and others that are really focusing on helping to grow that next generation of ag and food. And in Canada, we're lagging behind other countries for investment at Series A and beyond. This finding correlates to my previous slide around average investment size is smaller here. The number of deals we're doing in Canada in that later stage is also slower, and represents an opportunity for us in that Series A. On Monday night, a colleague that I've partnered with before, Laura, I'm going to call you out from Alberta Innovates. If you were here at Monday night, she made a comment around that we don't have a startup problem in Canada, we have a scale up. And I said, Laura, I got a graph for you. And this is the graph that kind of supports that. And so there could be, when I look at this and the activity that's happening in that early stage, we could have unmet growth capital needs tomorrow. We have them today, and we could have more. So we need to find a way to help scale our companies at that Series A and later to create that commercialization and longer-term success for our organizations in Canada. So as part of the research we did last summer in 2022, we did a number of interviews with over 300 industry participants, investment professionals, entrepreneurs, customers, and more. And there are 3 key themes that emerged from all of those interviews. I've talked about some of the funding challenges, but we also heard that there are specific gaps and opportunities related to overall ecosystem and value creation. There's strong consensus on the need for more domain expertise and value creation services on the part of investors. Ag and food entrepreneurs consulted have noticed a critical lack of quality of guidance and mentorship currently offered by conventional financial institutions and investors in this space. They want and need the domain expertise and the networks needed to help ag and food companies grow. So Canadian ag startups and scale-ups are really seeking guidance and mentorship from successful entrepreneurs, some of you in this room, industry experts, and investors with deep sector knowledge. The adoption of innovations appears particularly challenged given the relatively risk-averse nature and capital-intensive activities of producers and processors. Unique challenges in the ag space, such as long cycle times. I made a comment to someone in the room this morning, a typical farmer might have 35 or 40 cycles versus some of us, you know, I got monthly financial statements as a bank, and so every month there's a new cycle. Farmers have 35 or 40 cycles, and so making those cycles count and making sure when they're putting in new innovations and adoptions, that there's profitability or at least neutral impact is really important when you're working with limited cycle time for your business in a different perspective. So providing a network and acting as a connector is perceived as some of the highest impact benefits for investors today. And startups are really seeking to scale in the ag and food sector, and they benefit deeply from those connections with extensive networks and prospects, and many are looking for investors and networks beyond the borders in Canada as well. Increasing the capital allocated to entrepreneurs, serving the high value sectors of the value chain, so think inputs, processing, waste management, and finding those seasoned investors with the right expertise and network to support that commercialization is a top priority for the industry. Another thing we heard is there is no clear leader today in this investment space for Canadian ag or in the general ecosystem to help catalyze the industry. So what's the strategic opportunity for us? So FCC has had an investment program since 2001 in the venture capital space, and we currently have just under 600 million outstanding in commitments to around 18 externally managed venture capital funds, which all have a significant focus on the Canadian ag space. So while we've done a lot over the more recent years, specifically the last 5 or 6, to really progress innovation and investment, and we've recently expanded, there's lots more we can do, both in the capital provision side, but in the value creation ecosystem support side that this industry needs. And so we are looking to help close gaps seize opportunities, and create more opportunities for success of Canadian ag food entrepreneurs and companies like many of the ones in the room today. Our aspiration is to play a lead and catalyst role in the Canadian ag and food capital, and we've got data that tells us where we need to help, and that's where we're going for the future. And so our aspiration from a capital investment perspective is to become the trusted partner and catalyst in Canadian ag and agri-food as a stable and committed ecosystem investor where we're going to collaborate and provide capital, and I want to say also knowledge. So knowledge, mentorship, value connections, value creation, all of that sits in that knowledge word that's going to help drive innovation, sustainability, and productivity and success for this industry. We have plans to become an even bigger player in this space, and we have lots of foundational work underway that will help us come out with a bigger investment program and a bigger value add program for our next fiscal year next year. And we'll be sharing more with partners. Here I'm going to call out, we're growing our team. So the team that was FCC, I'm going to call out a colleague, Graham Millen, in the back. He is week 4 at FCC, and you'll see him at all of these kind of events. He is our newest VP for Business Development and Ecosystem Support, and we're growing out that function, which is our value add connection pieces in FCC, as well as adding some key investment professionals to FCC as we go forward. But I want to call out, FCC is not alone in this, and we're not doing this alone. Partners like the Canadian Food Innovation Network, who's hosting the event today, industry players, entrepreneurs, accelerators, investors, corporates, many of you in this room who I've talked to and known for a while, are as equally passionate and committed to the ag and food sector and are working just as hard to drive success for this important industry. So that is it for me. Thank you for your time, and good luck to all the companies presenting today. It's going to be a great morning.